So the recently released Corruption Perception Index that assesses and compares perceived levels of corruption among public officials and politicians in a wide range of countries around the world ranked Rwanda as 52nd out of 180 countries. Let's try to dissect that this evening as we speak to Mr. T.I Mupiganyi, the Executive Director of Transparency International Rwanda, who is live for us via Skype. Good evening, Mr. T.I.
Good evening, Gloria.
So Rwanda was ranked 52nd with 53% up from 54% last year. How come we are seeing a decline this time?
Yeah, thank you again. Indeed, as you mentioned, Rwanda decreased its score from 54% last year to 53%. As well as its ranking from 49 to 52. This is not only the case of Rwanda, but this was observed globally because 3 out of 4 countries globally, those who were ranked at CPI, so they are scoring decreasing. There are various reasons or various explanations. The COVID-19 has affected the activities aiming to promote, to fight corruption. But coming to the Rwandan case, especially when we look to the source of data, there is one source of data which really decreased a lot, one which is produced by a variety of democracy projects, where in 2020, Rwanda had 59%, and in 2021, this score decreased. In fact, variety of democracy assesses at which extent the criminal justice chain is addressing corruption. But on the other hand, we saw another source of data known as World Justice Project's Rule of Law and Index, where Rwanda increased its score from 54% in 2020 to 57%. So basically, this scoring is perception-based. And the ranking or the scoring from one source to another could depend to who is informant to inform the global scoring.
Absolutely. Let me intercept you a bit there. You mentioned COVID-19 as one of the reasons that has led to the decline, but specifically, how exactly has the pandemic led to the decline?
As you are aware, Gloria, during the COVID-19, all activities were somehow slowed down, or some of them were even closed. So government, from the point of view of the citizens, they thought that the government put more effort to prevent COVID rather than doing usual activities aiming to raising awareness of citizens on corruption and so forth. So those are the perception from the respondent, but again, from the experience, we saw some cases as well which were reported. This is an assumption. It's an assumption which needs to be proved by evidence, but this score, Corruption Perception Index, and the Rwanda Bribery Index showed that from the respondent that, yes, COVID had an impact, a negative impact on anti-corruption efforts.
I see. So the CPI considers various things while coming up with this report. So which of the corrupt behaviors that the CPI captures are most prevalent in Rwanda, and why?
In fact, the CPI captures the government anti-corruption system, how they are built to address corruption issues. Among the corruption forms that are measured in the CPI, there is bribery, diversion of public funds, just to name the few. But CPI as well looked at how the systems, especially judicial system, is addressing corruption cases. So when the scoring or the assessment is conducted, the experts who respond to CPI survey provide their opinion on how they see the government is addressing corruption nationwide.
Okay, and looking at the countries' rankings, the top countries being Denmark and I think New Zealand and Finland with all 88%, what would you say that these top ranking countries are doing different than the rest of the countries? And if we can bring it home in Rwanda in particular?
Yeah, thank you for this interesting question. Yes, there are some countries who are always on the top of the CPI ranking, as you mentioned, Denmark, New Zealand, and Finland. But those countries have a long history in their governance system. So looking to our country, Rwanda is really coming very far. If we look to what's happened in this country in 1994, genocide against the Tutsi, and what we have achieved so far, I think we can command the efforts and the best achievements realized so far in such a short period. But again, fighting corruption, it's a behavior change. We think with the effort of everyone, we can, in the long run, be on the same level for these countries.
And Mr. Pauline, what should be done to bridge the gap of the remaining 47% in Rwanda?
Yeah, fighting corruption requires a collective action. And I think it's very important that those who are victims, especially the citizens, have to be the drivers of change. For our country, our recommendation is to keep raising awareness of the citizens, because on one hand they are victims, on the other hand they are perpetrator, or they promote corruption. Some of them think that they gain, but at the end everyone loses. So we have to keep the momentum, strengthening or raising awareness of citizens to report corruption. But on the other hand, the lawmakers, they have to keep the zero tolerance to corruption in Rwanda.
And before I let you go briefly, how has the release of such reports, such as the CPI, contributed to the fight against corruption in Rwanda and generally across the world?
The CPI is a very recognized indices because it's used in many forums, including even investments. Some investors look to the CPI on specific countries to decide if they invest or not. But at the global level, CPI, or even at national level, it is a tool for reforms. At the global level, we can give example of the international anti-corruption tools, UNICA, United Nations Convention Against Corruption. This was inspired by the trend of the corruption at the global level. And in Rwanda, we commend reforms that are initiated based on such researches, CPI, or even Rwanda Bravery Index conducted by Transparency International Rwanda.
Absolutely. Many thanks, Mr. Pauline Mupiganyi, for your time this evening.
Thank you, Gloria, for inviting me.
All right.